So let's just start with Tyron Woodley, Kenny, and this monumental win. And I call it that because I think this is sort of one that's going to look really good on the resume going forward, given what I think Darren Till is going to be able to do from here in terms of learning from this, because I think his ceiling is still very high. But Tyron at times has been a champion that people haven't supported for one reason or another, whether it's because of things he says or because he has fought opponents that have been difficult to look good against. But he certainly looked good against this opponent on Saturday night and is receiving some overdue appreciation from the masses.
Without a doubt. That was one of those, in case you forgot, performances. And went out there against Darren Till, a guy who was favored by the time fight time came around, which is crazy. And Tyron went out there and took care of business. He's such a good counterpuncher, and he always has the right tactics. He's very disciplined, always executes the game plan extremely well. And it's just awesome to see this kind of performance out of Tyron Woodley, who has been criticized for being so measured and this and that. Well, what? He didn't finish Damian Maia after he tore his shoulder in the first round. He didn't finish a guy in Wonder Boy. It's like you're talking about one of the best strikers of all time, one of the best grapplers of all time. So, yeah, he's been unfairly criticized, and he went out there against Darren Till, who was much larger than him, who was a much more experienced striker, so we thought. And Tyron Woodley just took it to him, man. The first round, he had him thinking about the takedown. And then, I think that really had an effect on the way that he landed that right hand, similar to how he did against Robbie Lawler. He was clinching early, and it gets you to shut down your offense a little bit because you think this guy's going to, try to take me down again. The hands drop a little bit. You get a bit lackadaisical on the feet, and Tyron landed that right hand from hell. He went second. He was patient, landed that huge shot, and those elbows were absolutely brutal. Oh. Credit to Darren Till for hanging in there. I don't think a lot of welterweights in the world would have been able to withstand that kind of punishment. But in the end, it was the submission, that Darce of Tyron Woodley, that showed just how dangerous this guy is.
And then he was rewarded his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And, of course, if you know Tyron, you know that was the most genuine reaction of the night out of him. His jaw dropped when Dean Thomas presented him with that black belt. And I think there are a couple reasons why. I mean, as somebody appropriately put it on Twitter, part of it is because he doesn't really care what people think about if he doesn't care about those people. But the people that he really cares about, like Dean Thomas, he really cares about what they think. And the fact that Dean gave him that gesture after that. Dean thought the fight was going to end by rear naked choke, he told me. So he wanted to make sure he had the black belt in tow just in case Dean won by submission. So then you go Darce, Ken Flo. I mean, a Darce like that, that's a pretty Darce right there. You got no choice but to give the black belt. But pretty cool, I would think, for you to see that moment play out the way it did.
I was stoked for him. And I agree. They wrapped the strap around his waist. They raised his hand after he hit that submission. He's just completely, oh, good. Yeah, cool. He gets the black belt. He's like, yes, I'm so excited. This is awesome. I mean, that's what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is all about. It is a huge, huge accomplishment. I actually just awarded a black belt with my business partner, Jason Hunt, over the weekend. And this guy is like a superhero in the police department over here. And he said, it doesn't matter. He's like, this is what I've been working for my whole life. Promotions, anything I've done on law enforcement end, it doesn't matter. It's all about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. The guy was absolutely stoked. But you could see the same thing with Tyron Woodley. It's a huge accomplishment. And it just shows how much of a martial artist Tyron Woodley truly is.
Yep. And I liked in his post-fight interview with you guys, you had a strong 6 minutes out of most of you. No, I'm just kidding. You were all great. But no, I thought he was really good in talking about jiu-jitsu as one of his early bases, his bases early on, right? And so I think that was part of his emotion, just really happy to have sort of completed that mission. What's the name of the police officer who got the black belt? Are we allowed to say that here on the airwaves or what?
Don. How's that?
Okay, we'll leave it at Don. If you get pulled over, I guess we don't have his surname, but if you do get pulled over in the metropolitan Los Angeles area.
He's a detective. I don't know if he wants his name out there, but he's the man.
All right, that's good. Of course he's a detective.
Yeah.
It's Ken from RockyBJJ.com. So great stuff for Tyron Woodley. One interesting angle for Darren Till. He basically took the entire first round off, Kenny. Calculatedly, strategically, this is what his approach was going to be. And I think there's some regret there, more regret for the big right hand of Woodley's that he was out of place to be able to take. But he He says next time maybe he would warm up differently. We heard Eddie Alvarez talk about that recently, that strategically for him now going forward, he tries to get a full round in the back. I don't know how you treated that warm up from fight to fight, but it seems like Till, what the learning starts right away. And for Darren Till, he knows he needs to go in there maybe with a little more of a lather to get some things done early against somebody like Tyron Woodley.
Yes, absolutely. I used to love a long warm-up myself. When I cut down to 145 pounds, that really was not possible. I wanted to save everything for fight night. I remember I was warming up for Jose Aldo for like 30 seconds, and my legs were cramping. My muscles felt like I felt like I just ran a marathon. I go, guys, that's it for the warm-up. I'm just going to chill here and wait. And so I don't know if it was due to the weight cut. Maybe he didn't have enough energy, or just maybe improper warming up and just thinking that he was good to go, and who knows. But this game is so difficult. There's so many things that can go right and wrong, and you have to find what works best for you. Darren Till is still only 25 years old. It's amazing that at 25, he already fought for a belt. This is a guy that I believe will come back stronger and better. Why? Because of his post-fight interview. He's the guy who says, listen, I just lost to the better guy. That's it. When you see a person who makes excuses, when he hit me with that lucky punch, I just wasn't able to recover. I thought it was an early stoppage. Whatever it is, they're not going to get better. They want to put it on someone else. And this is a very, very honest game that requires you to be just as honest to yourself. And Darren Till, I thought, was very honest in his assessment of the game. And it showed, right? I mean, Tyron Woodley, looked like he was a different class of fighter on Saturday night.
And I think that's what he's trying to prove to everyone, that he is this world-class long-term type of great, and the only way obviously to get there is to keep winning fights. And when you're chasing guys like George St. Pierre and Matt Hughes to make a proclamation that you're the best welterweight of all time is going to fall on a lot of deaf ears. And I think sometimes he hasn't gotten appreciation because he said he's the best welterweight of all time, and people just haven't seen the body of work. But this win does a whole lot for that body of work. And with all due respect to Johnny Hendricks, hopefully with a fat Copenhagen in his lower lip as he's listening to this right now, Tyron Woodley doesn't want to be Johnny Hendricks. He doesn't want to be one of these champions. I know Hendricks had some circumstances, some decisions didn't go his way. Of course, Carlos Condit's whole narrative changed, I thought, with that Robbie Lawler decision. But, Tyron Woodley wants to be an all-time great. And I think when you add a Darren Till win to what he's done against some other people, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson chief among them, he really – I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go the all-time discussion tonight. Maybe he creeps into that top 3 or 4 welterweights of all time, but he's certainly moving in the right direction. And that brings us to George St. Pierre, at least just for a second, because I think now people really want to see that fight. And forget about November 3rd, because if George St. Pierre is going to take this fight, you don't need Kenny Florian to be the one to tell you that it's not going to happen on November 3rd. But GSP has never seemingly wanted that fight. That has never been a fight. It's been a fight that's been on the table now, for the better part of 24 months, because it's a fight that Tyron would love. So what do you think is next for Tyron Woodley? I would imagine you don't think it's GSP.
I don't think it's GSP. To go back to who the greatest welterweight of all time is, listen, I still think it's George St. Pierre. I truly do. I just think that when you look at Tyron Woodley and who he's faced, and the fact that this sport is evolving and getting better all the time. George St. Pierre has never faced a grappler like a Damian Maia, and he's never faced a striker like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So, I think over time, as Tyron continues to win, I think he will take that number 1 spot. However, I think this is a fight that could happen, however. When you look at Tyron Woodley and his impressive wins and who he's beaten, I think if he's able to get another couple of wins and do it like he did against Darren Till, if he's able to destroy a Colby Covington, for example, there's only really one guy left, and that's Kamaru Usman. If, again, he gets through him or cuts through him early, I think that it's a better chance of happening. I truly do. I think for George St. Pierre, he wants a huge fight, and he wants to fight someone who, people are very impressed with, a fight that people would consider a super fight, a fight that is going to help his legacy. And I think as of right now, he probably still feels like he's the best welterweight. But when he starts to question that, because George St. Pierre is about challenges, just like Tyron Woodley is about challenges. Yeah. When you start to question, am I the best at the end of the day? If I beat Tyron Woodley, he puts a stamp on that. When that starts to kind of creep into his mind, I think we'll see George St. Pierre take that fight. So maybe if he's still around another couple years or another year.
Well, the fight that I really want to see, and I want to see it here relatively soon, because I think for Tyron Woodley, momentum is important. Staying active is important. We've seen what it's done for Israel Adesanya and, of course, Jessica Andrade over the weekend. I want to see Madison Square Garden early November, Colby Covington, right? I mean,
that's the fight.
I think a lot of people who maybe thought that was a close fight on paper will look at this recent result and think that Woodley can really put a beating on Colby Covington. I think it's a competitive fight. I can't wait to see it, and I hope that they work quickly to try to make that happen. You know, Madison Square Garden and the nature of a big show and the pay-per-view points and money that comes with it would appeal to your guy T. Wood. So maybe November 3rd they'll unify those belts, so to speak, even though the interim belt is not a thing anymore, and it will be Woodley and Covington. What do you think about the reality of that and how competitive that might be?
I think Colby Covington deserves it. Listen, this is a guy who put in a great performance against Rafael dos Anjos, another great performance against Damian Maia. You may not love what he says, but I think he's a really tough fighter, and I think it's a pretty big fight. I think people would be very excited about it. He's the bad guy. And I think Tyron needs to let him be the bad guy. He can go in there as the good guy and make it a big fight. And I think it'd be an exciting one. And it's a fight that's interesting because I think very few people, have the wrestling skills. I think Damian Maia tried to make it a grinding, tough fight, for Tyron Woodley. I think Colby would make it that much more difficult in a lot of ways. And he has the wrestling and he has the conditioning, clearly, as he showed against Rafael dos Anjos, to make it a tough fight for Tyron. I know Tyron wants that fight. I think Tyron really wants to put his hands on Colby Covington. And I think maybe, I don't know if it would happen in November. I don't know if Colby or Tyron would be ready. But if they're talking about it, man, let's do it. I'd love to see it.
And Covington has already thrown out New York City, so we'll see if they can work quickly to try to get that happen.
I'm hearing another main event for MSG.
Well, right. There's a lot of different rumors going around, but we will see. We will see, and maybe we'll continue that part of the conversation off the air, and we'll see if Darren Till goes up to 185 pounds. I think how well Fight Week went relative to his weight cut will maybe keep him at 70 for a fight like Kamaru Usman or something like that. But very productive weekend, needless to say, for one Tyron Woodley, and also